This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? If you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. Choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is the pro football season cannot start soon enough. Leader Fan Radio Network. Excuse me? And KFAN.com. 1 minute and 57 seconds past the hour, 3 o'clock Central Daylight Saving Time. Welcome back. It is a Thursday extravaganza, a Thursday production of the Bumper to Bumper program on another decidedly overcast weekday afternoon here in the Twin Cities that we affectionately refer to as Minneapolis and St. Louis Park. My name is Dan Barreiro, the host of the program. Guardsy is here along for the ride. Might get bumpy between now and 6:30. We'll see. We'll give you details on the, formerly known as Borton Volvo guest lineup.
Remember that?
Those are the days.
Yeah.
That sponsorship, I think, is available. Bradshaw and Bryant still is in charge, still sponsoring the KFAN text line. You can reach us via 64686. I will mention the inbox, Dr. Dan's inbox, is scheduled for now at least to be open at 4:30.
Also available for sponsorship.
Big time. And I would heartily encourage you, if you haven't already, to email Guardsy, JG@KFAN.com, if you have some letters. Somebody via the text line, it could have been somebody trying to get me going, I don't know, said that there was a Dr. Dan during the Paul Allen project the other day.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that.
And I haven't been able to get any kind of confirmation on that. I don't even think PA was on today. Wasn't Nordo in charge today?
I think so. He wasn't on yesterday either.
Yeah, so I don't know what the deal was. So anybody can give me more information on that, please pass it along to me. Because sometimes stuff gets planted.
Right.
And it's just to get me going.
Or lost in translation. Of what really happened.
That happens a lot. You're right about that.
Yes.
You're 100% correct. I know a lot of people will agree with my assertion at the top of the show that the pro football season cannot start soon enough. Their reason is the most obvious one. They just love the game. Mm-hmm. They miss pro football when it's not on. It's a comfort food for billions and not billions, millions of people. Fair to say?
Yes.
Millions for sure. And it applies, in my case, again today, for a decidedly different reason, even though I love pro football as much as anybody. Love talking about it, love bouncing off of it, love watching it on the Barca, the whole bit. And it's, the referendum that has already broken out yet again online regarding the viability of JJ McCarthy as a starting quarterback, dare I say it, franchise quarterback in the National Football League. Let me give you examples of the range. This is right now. This is
June 12th.
June 12th.
Yep.
Right now. Now, we had our last day, I think, of our mandatory minicamp today, correct?
Yes.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
Yep.
And I think we've now wrapped it up. And here's an example, two examples of what we're talking about. For Nystrom tweets, I am once again begging Colin Cowherd to actually watch JJ McCarthy play football before commenting further on his game. He's in a debate, and the video is Cowherd. I don't know who the other person is who's on with them. And Colin seems to be the skeptic, especially about JJ McCarthy's arm, that it is at best a middle-of-the-road kind of National Football League arm. And he, I think, also asks the question, well, if the Vikings were as certain about JJ as you say, then why does Minnesota keep flirting, to use his terms, with other quarterbacks? Now, the baseline for this is It's Jason McIntyre who he is on with.
Okay.
They are reacting to reports of JJ McCarthy struggling at Vikings OTAs. So there's that on the one hand. And then there's, where did the other one go? I wanted to try to get the name because I want to give this individual proper credit. But the problem is they're probably, here it is. JJ McCarthy was throwing lasers in Vikings minicamp.
Lasers.
There are people around the league saying they would prefer him over a quarterback like Joe Burrow. And then they've got the two eyeball emojis that are like,
yep.
You know, what that's like amazed term, I guess.
Like you're looking.
Like you can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the pièce de résistance in this Twitter report. JJ is already a top 3 quarterback. And so when you read this range of stuff in June, when nothing's happened, he hasn't thrown a meaningful pass for the good or for the bad. Why I say, my God, let's start the season. We need to get to some actual games through which we can then perhaps do a meaningful analysis of where JJ McCarthy stands. It's out of control. It's absolute. Now, again, the Pro Football loves it. They say, well, that's why we're king. Dan, it's June. And what's trending on X locally? Well, it's JJ McCarthy. There's even one of him. The first one I saw was the people that know JJ McCarthy on his arm strength. You see that quote?
Oh, yeah.
Might be worthy top 5. The people that know. Now, did he say it with as much brashness as I read it? The people that know. Like, yeah, my arm's fine. My arm strength is not going to be an issue in the National Football League. Was that how he said it? Do you know?
I didn't see it. Okay. I just saw the quote like you did.
Yeah.
But I will pull it up for the top 5
I'm kind of curious because it could be stated a lot of different ways, right?
And
the people that know,
yes.
Or it could be the people that know.
Exactly.
They know.
And I'm with you. I think we've been saying this for 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. Every OTA or minicamp, we went through the list a week or so ago. We went through the list a couple of weeks ago, the guys he's being compared to.
Yes.
The way that his process is being described, the way that Kevin O'Connell is talking about him or being asked about him, in fairness to KOC. I think I even used the direct quote. He needs the season to start because it's getting so thick. Imagine how training camp's going to be. Like, we have to be there day 1 of training camp, right?
We are.
Not even like first day in pads like we usually do. We usually wait for the first day in pads. I think we need to be there the day they check in. Even if there's not anything on the field, I think we have to be at TCO and Egan.
Here's another one. Playa Haters tweets. JJ McCarthy to Jalen Naylor for 6. Vikings found their franchise QB. Game, set, match. There's nothing else to think about or to discuss or debate. JJ McCarthy is going to feast in the RZ this year. What's RZ stand for?
Red zone, probably.
That's a good point. Red zone. I should know that. I'm out of practice.
You're not a ball guy.
Cam was the guy who, and he's got a check mark, said JJ is already a top 3 quarterback in the National Football League.
$8 a month for that opinion to get the check mark.
A lot of JJ McCarthy on people saying he lacks arm strength. A lot of it comes from the stigma of playing at Michigan, not throwing the ball a lot. There's some truth to that.
The stigma, yeah.
Well, that's an interesting term. Well, there's a lot of reasons for stigma at the University of Michigan.
Those Michigan players have been so put upon.
Here's Henry McKenna's quarterback power rankings via Fox NFL. I don't know. Do you know who Henry McKenna is?
I don't.
Is that a real person?
It could be.
Here's his power rankings right now. Quarterback, National Football League. 1, Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
Which seems a little high to me, but, he's accomplished some things.
Super Bowl.
Correct. 2, Jaden McDaniels. 3, JJ McCarthy. Just ahead of Caleb Williams at 4 and Aaron Rodgers at 5. Now, maybe that's satire. I don't know. But that's how absurd this is.
It's probably satire, but it could be real.
It could be real.
Because of what we're hearing and how people are talking about it.
We just need it to start so badly.
I said it. It's going to be a long summer. Thankfully, the Wolves got us to June. where we only have like 5 weeks until training camp now, right? And after this week, we're not going to hear a ton coming out of Egan. So this should be a nice little respite, I think, because it has gotten very thick.
Well, you hope, that part of the reason it's back today or this week is because of the camp and that it's going to settle down. Been calling JJ McCarthy a bust ever since Sean Payton swindled the Vikings.
Oh,
there's another one.
Nix.
JJ McCarthy finding newly extended tight end Josh Oliver over the middle of the field. Now that's just a basic, not overplayed. It sounds like that tweeter is just describing the play. God forbid we would keep it on that level. What else do we have here? Oh, here. Here's a shot. So the quote is in quotation marks, JJ McCarthy. And then it's a shot of Westbrook, the player, basketball player, blowing a dunk at the basket. Get it? That's because McCarthy threw an interception for a third straight day. This one going to Byron Murphy Jr.
Okay, no crime there. Good player.
Next to that one, Cam's back from a day ago. JJ McCarthy was reportedly unstoppable today at Vikings minicamp. He threw for 8 touchdown passes out of just 14 and only had 1 incompletion the entire practice. The Vikings have a superstar at quarterback. That's Cam. Right below here, that one, JJ McCarthy is a bust. Headline, JJ McCarthy concerns. Laid out already.
See what JJ said about him today?
No. Oh, I'm afraid to ask. Jets, yeah.
He has a tight spin. Comes to you quicker than you expect. His ability to throw into tight windows, that's what we're going to need in the season. So at least he's thinking about the season.
Last but not least for this segment.
Tight spin.
In quotation marks, Metellus compares J.J. McCarthy's arm to Sean Mannion's. I think that's somebody trying to have some fun on the basis of
Mannion
those
had a hose.
He did?
Yeah, we just never got to see it. Mannion? Yeah.
No, the guy we had last year had the hose. Who was the guy who threw all the interceptions? He had a laser.
I think Mannion don't underrate Mannion's arm.
You think he had a hell of a cannon? That was Jeff George?
Well, I do remember him throwing 60-yard bombs to nobody on the practice field 3 or 4 years ago. Chris Collinsworth told us Sean Mannion wasn't going to be intimidated. If I remember right. Didn't he have to start a Sunday Night Football game?
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
This guy's not going to be scared of this moment. Sean Mannion throwing it all over the place. Didn't go very well.
What's the date of our season opener? Do you have it near you?
I sure do. We always, Dan, have the Vikings schedule right here. They open the season Monday, September 8th, Monday Night Football against your Chicago Bears.
We need September. Can we just skip through the rest of June, July, and August and just, with a snap of the fingers, make it at least September 1?
Well, you're taking 3 weeks off in June, so that'll make it go fast.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
I want to try to get to 2 items quickly here before the bottom of the hour break and an in-studio guest. In addition, Russo Radio will file a live report from the Stanley Cup final, not finals, final.
Careful.
That's at 5:30, I believe. Did you see the Jim Harbaugh update? What he's been up to in their minicamp?
No.
He has introduced, I think this is new. At least I've never heard of it before. He is using or giving out accomplishment patches. Now, is this because of that old Michigan tradition? Isn't it Michigan and Ohio State that have the decals, or was it just Ohio State? I can't remember which.
Among others. I think they both do, yeah.
So, Is this new to pro football? Have I missed this? And a lot of teams or a lot of coaches do this, an accomplishment patch.
So where does it go?
I only saw the headline. I'm not even sure. I'm assuming it goes maybe on the jersey, maybe on the helmet. I don't know. But it has to do with encouraging, apparently, better practice habits. The accomplishment patch. See if you can find anything out about it. Had you heard of it?
I had not heard of that, no.
Now, again, it's Harbaugh.
It's Harbaugh.
You go, Harbaugh.
Everything's weird.
Everything's weird, although often successful in his weirdness. But I'm just curious if anybody else has any information. Because it sounds like something we would do.
I'm surprised we haven't.
And maybe we haven't. I don't even know.
In our own way.
Because it's very clear that if we gave out accomplishment patches, J-Mac would already have about 12 of them.
His helmet would be full.
It would be full. There'd be no more room.
In fact, I'm going to Google his Michigan helmet. I assume that they had to make it a little bit bigger just to fit all the stickers. So, yes, the patches go on the practice jerseys, apparently.
On the jersey, okay.
Yeah, this is from NFL.com. Like a resume, kind of reminds me how a military general has different patches, is what Harbaugh said of the practice patches.
Well, there's no difference. Football and the military.
What the Chargers are doing right now to what the military's doing.
No difference.
In Los Angeles, they've got both there right now, the Chargers and the military. Everything's going great.
Very, very similar. Here's the other item. Did you happen to catch the getaway day baseball score at Target Field 4 miles from here?
Heard it wasn't very good.
I'll give it to you. Twins 3, Rangers 16. 16-3. Now, this is not to be confused with 2 days ago when we lost 16-4.
Right.
So we won yesterday 6-2, but sandwiched around that losses of 16-4, 16-3. And the disturbing part today is I believe Ober. I think Bailey Ober was the starter today.
He was.
And it did not go very well. And there's some talk about there's some funky stuff going with him again. That's given all the injuries, I think you'll agree this is the last thing this rotation needs. Because Ober, and this goes back to a little bit of my problem with the ball guys who declared what? This was before the Pablo injury.
Great starting pitching.
Great rotation. Mm-hmm. And my concern was, okay, but is it really great? Have we decided that Bailey Ober has done enough good work that we can now say, just check mark, he's one of the best starting pitchers in baseball? I'm not sure. I mean, when he's been good, he's been very good. But aren't we already seeing the foolhardy nature of those kinds of projections, unless you're talking about Cy Young Award candidate pitchers who year in and year out are that good, the Greg Maddoxes of the world?
Well, even a couple of years ago when they had Lopez and Sonny Gray, and then whoever else was third or fourth, that's part of the reason why they had such a great rotation.
That's true.
But in the same half hour, we've talked about what JJ McCarthy is being anointed as, so it shouldn't be any surprise that people that have actually pitched in the majors, they might jump the gun on that too. But people have been saying that today, like if this is the Ober you're going to get when everybody else is down, could be dicey.
People are kind of way ahead of us. They seem to get the bit. We've got texts from both Willow, Mark Rosen's cat guy, and Maury Amsterdam guy in Minneapolis. First, Maury, the Vikings have intentional accomplishment patches, Dan. And Willow, Mark Rosen's cat guy, writes, the Vikings have collaboration patches, Dan.
So it's about being intentional in the collaboration.
That's
nothing for alignment, though.
Shouldn't it?
We haven't done alignment, though.
Well, there's still time.
Vision?
There's still maybe that's another State Fair T-shirt idea. Something playing off of all the word salad.
Oh, that is good.
Something, and maybe even the big three from the Suns' new general manager.
Right.
Because there were 3 in a row with him that were outstanding.
Vision, identity, right?
Vision, identity.
How do we forget? We heard them 500 times in an hour.
I think I saved them in my notes because I want to find, because that could be a possibility, although it's not particularly alliterative, is it? I can't find it, but I think I saved it. We'll try to find it.
It's easily found.
Point. It should be very easily found.
That's true.
Sure.
We've used that for many, many years, so we probably should try to capitalize on it.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea. It's something at least to think about. And as you know, the State Fair is
right around the corner.
Right around the corner. Lastly, real quick, and we're going to have more time to get into this later. The Indiana Pacers, the underdog Indiana Pacers, are now 2 victories away from their first National Basketball Association title. They go up 2-1 with an impressive home win last night against the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm going to give you one stat to chew on a little bit. In I think when you get into the discussion always of, well, what do the Pacers know that the Wolves don't, for example, or what can the Wolves learn from what the Pacers have done? I think a lot of the discussion tends to be about offense. It tends to be about, well, in my view, offensively, what the Pacers represent is a team, the beauty of a team that plays with more than one ball handler. When I say ball handler, I don't mean just can handle the basketball, dribble it. I mean make a play with it. It's a great advantage, which the Wolves don't really have right now and aren't going to because it looks like Mike Conley is likely going to be put to the bench, if not traded. More on that later. In the 2 victories the Pacers have gotten in the finals to put themselves in prime position, maybe to steal this series, they've allowed Oklahoma City to shoot 46% and 40%. In the Wolves' 4 losses to Oklahoma City, you want to hear the Oklahoma City shooting percentage numbers? 52, 50, 50, and 50.
Sorry, KFAN.
So as much as, and by the way, that's with Rudy, anchoring this defense a little bit, which is interesting. But it is a reminder that part of what has to get better is the Vikings. See, that's on the head. The Wolves' defense. The Pacers, despite all the reputation about we run and gun, we move, we're constantly ahead of everybody else. We are tireless in our approach. Fact of the matter is, their defense has been pretty good. Now, some of that you could say were missed shots factor in, but the differences in those percentages are pretty stark, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if in all 4 games in the National Basketball Association in the conference finals, you're allowing 50%, that's a problem. That's not good enough defense, is it? Because Oklahoma City, we all think of they're the great defensive juggernaut, but those numbers are too good. That's letting their offense have it too easy. So I think that has to be part of the discussion moving forward.
Well, I would say real quickly, part of defense is not turning the ball over.
Very true.
Because that's how Oklahoma City just feasts and thrives, correct? Pacers had 13 turnovers last night. 13. Against the team that we were told it's impossible. You just can't limit your turnovers against the Thunder because they do that to everybody. Well, the Pacers figured it out last night and played a terrific game.
Well, it's something to think about. And later, I'm actually, believe it or not, if we have time, I am going to defend the Pitchfork Nation folks out there who have been demanding the dismissal of Chris Finch, not because I agree with them, but because I think there's an easy thread of logic that should make it a lot simpler for us to understand how some people might get there. And it, again, is related to the Indiana Pacers and their head coach as well. Bottom of the hour pause now. In-studio guest, Sarah Spain. How would we describe her career? ESPN superstar.
Won every award out there.
Won pretty much every award, including a Peabody, if I'm not mistaken.
We hear every day talking about her iHeart podcast, which she just won an award for.
She's got a major podcast as well. She used to participate in high school in like 7 sports. We might cover that at some point. And now also part owner of the Aurora, correct? So she's in town for a couple of different reasons, and she'll get over that or into that. And she's got a book out that's getting a lot of, I think, very understandable attention. So a lot of ground to cover with her in studio. Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line is open if you have questions, 64686. We'll continue with Sarah Spain next here in the Fan. Sarah Spain, as I said, kind enough to join us in studio this afternoon. Thank you very much for coming in to see us, and welcome to back to the Twin Cities. Remind folks what this visit is all about.
I'm going to see the Minnesota Aurora. Got my skin in the game as an owner, so I got to see the product on the field. Crack some skulls, make sure everything's being handled the way I would handle it.
Yes.
Wind sprints for everyone.
And I like that. So what got you involved in this? Because you had previously, didn't you have some ownership of with the Chicago team?
Yeah. So the Chicago Stars, now color neutral Stars, used to be the Red Stars. Now they're color neutral. They were following sort of in the footsteps of Angel City, which a lot of teams in the NWSL sort of looked at the community not quite like Minnesota Aurora community, but the larger group of owners at Angel City, and thought we don't need to just have one middle-aged white dude that runs everything. Let's, spread the net. And so the then majority owner reached out to me among other people. And then I wrangled a whole bunch of other people to join. And while I learned a lot from the experience, and I sort of have written it off with the silver lining of being similar to a business degree, going to get my master's, understanding the ownership side of things. Unfortunately, the overall experience was pretty bad. Our majority owner was forced to sell. Our coach is banned from the league. Part of the investigation into the toxicity of the league itself resulted in a handful of teams being, forced to sell or change ownership, or coaches being banned. And being on the back end of that and trying to use my experience in the field to say we need to address this immediately. Here's what the players came and told me. Here's the action we should take. Here's the statements we should make. Here's the way we center them. Here's the things we should do. And not being listened to because I didn't have the power and, frankly, enough money to be the decision maker behind the scenes was really frustrating. And ultimately, he was forced to sell. The minority owners, because of drag rights, all had to go as well. So now there's new ownership there that I'm not a part of. And Andrea, the hustler,
yes,
Andrea Yack, who is the big dog over at Minnesota Aurora.
That's on your card, is it not?
It's on her business card, yeah. She came barking my way, knowing that my show Good Game with Sarah Spain was reaching out to a lot of fans of women's sport, and that our listeners and that I personally might be interested in hearing more about this community-owned team that wanted to do things right. And I was itching to, again, put my money where my mouth is, which I believe is that women's sports is this meteoric rise, and we should all be invested in it, both personally and in our fandom, and also with our wallets, and also to hopefully be part of something that operated in the way that I wanted to, instead of getting caught up with the group that I was before that wasn't always making the decisions I would.
What would you say, looking back, you learned from the Chicago experience? What did you get out of that?
I would say a couple things. One is that I kind of joke about never having had a real job. I'm sure you say the same. We sort of work in the toy department. And while there are intersections of a ton of really important issues that happen in sports, and you have the opportunity to talk about them to a really wide range of folks who are coming from all different backgrounds and interests in politics and whatever, and they're here to talk about sport. And when you've got them there, you could talk about bigger picture things, which is one of the things I love about sports. It still is sort of the toy department. So I always thought of myself as someone who would be learning a lot from being behind the scenes about business and ownership and all the other things. And I did. But also, I now never walk into a room and think I don't have the ability, intelligence, experience, or otherwise to speak up, because I was in rooms with people who presumably had years of business experience and intellect and acumen, and they made the wrong decisions, and they made the wrong choices, and they were in CYA mode a lot, and it caught up to them in ways that I predicted and told them, and they refused to listen to. So I just have a lot more confidence in myself as a business person and going into rooms. My ESPN colleague Dominique Foxworth would talk about how coming out of the NFL, people presumed things of him. Mm-hmm. But he went to Harvard Business School. He became the head of the NBA PA, even as an NFL player. And when he was on the NFL side working with the Players Association, as a player, he would go into rooms and expect these owners who were billionaires to be brilliant. Oh, they must be so smart because they've gotten this great business success. And he'd be like, oh, no, I got this. And that's how I felt. I was like, oh, okay. Some of these people tripped their way into it and or were born into it.
Yeah.
And or maybe are great at business, but don't know the women's sports space or the sports space and think bury it and it'll go away. And one of the things that sports is very transparent. Like, you might not find out ever about another company and why they fired their president or why someone, but in sports, there's always going to be questions and reporters knocking down your door asking why the coach left or this player got benched or whatever else. And trying to bury things isn't the answer, and it never was there. And so, that's the main one, is to not put limits on myself.
Not be intimidated.
Yeah.
To walk in intimidated on the basis of, I just make these assumptions about these individuals on the basis of what's on their resume.
Yeah. And the other one is, and I find this a lot with former players, recently retired players, especially ones who want to get back into the sport they played at the ownership level, front office level, even coaching. The communication between ownership and players is so important. And oftentimes, when things break down, it's just because one doesn't understand the other. I think in men's sports, there's a pyramid, and Merritt Mathias, a recently retired NWSL player, said this on my show. The pyramid for men's sports, very clearly the players are at the top. Not only are they extremely rich because of their contracts and their sponsorships, but their influence and power is immediately accepted. And therefore, owners, front office, everybody else in the sports industrial complex has to continue to put them at the top and respect that. Women athletes are somewhere in the middle, if that. They are treated like they are not the most valuable product. They are treated as interchangeable because they don't get paid as much, because their influence isn't, as up till now, it's getting there, as powerful. And so the players feel like they're not heard. And then the owners make decisions independently of them, even if they don't know what the players really want and need. There are a couple places I think that do it really well, like Athletes Unlimited, where they have a board of players that influences their decision making on where they spend. Okay, if you want this from the uniforms, we need to let you know that this isn't going to happen with the snacks that you have in the locker room or whatever it is.
Right.
And then they help them see what they get to pick from and decide what they value and what they prioritize. Whereas I think in a lot of the other leagues, it's just decision making at the top level that the players don't understand. The players think they're rolling in money up there and just choosing not to do the things that they wish for. And then the owners think the players are ungrateful, but they never listen to them about what they actually want. And then they make decisions that aren't centering the players. So I think it almost should be a necessity for a player, either current or recently retired, to be in the room, in those meetings, in those spaces, helping to bridge that gap so that both sides better understand. Because that's one thing I learned in the ownership level is I got there, I said, how come our jerseys are never ready day one? People want to wear them for the games that season, not at the end of the season. And there was a promise that they would be there, and then they weren't. They came at the end of the season, and it's distribution, and it's when did you get your design, and it's sometimes the fault of the manufacturer, but more times it's the team. And where's the missing, outcome from the intention that we had, and how do we fix that? Or something like concessions. I wanted concessions to look completely different for the team. I didn't even realize that they don't run that. They don't own the building. The building not only chooses what the concessions are, but makes the money off them. So trying to be creative and different to serve a different fan base than the other people showing up at that stadium wasn't an option. And that's why it's great to own your own stadium. That's why it's great to run your own thing. But understanding and knowing what happens behind the scenes helps you be less mad at, quote unquote, the man for the things that they do.
Right.
And more picking and choosing which things you do criticize and which things you say probably aren't on them.
So you played, I think, several sports in high school, right? You were in track, basketball, field hockey,
Yep.
heptathlete at Cornell, correct? Yep. So I'm curious because we talk about this a lot on this show. The when we have guests on, there's a sort of built-in belief, certainly on the men's side, that in the NBA, for example, there's an old school way to coach and there's a relatively new way to coach, which is a lot more quote unquote communication, a lot more explaining. And that the idea was that you can't hammer the same way that you used to. And I've got some people who agree with that. Some people who actually rebel against it. They think players still want to be coached more than folks realize, but maybe it's what they've been brought up in a little bit. And so they're not used to a harsher tone. How do you perceive, compared to, let's say, when you were being coached in high school and college, when you talk to athletes today, maybe including WNBA, is the same pattern following suit? Because, the sports are in different places in terms of their growth and on the continuum. But do you pick up the same thing, that there's this dividing line between the way it once was and that players just won't respond the same way, even if some of the criticism is fairly legit?
Yes, completely. And I think particularly in women's sports, part of the issue is the lack of women at the top. And that stems from stereotypical, antiquated ideas about what a coach looks like and sounds like. And usually that's a guy that's screaming. That's just the way it used to always be. And actually, Nicole Lavoie, who runs the, I'm going to forget the name of her, her educational division or department, but run studies on this and how the idea of what it sounds like and looks like to be a quote unquote great coach isn't based in results. It's more so based in impression or vibe. And that because of that, the hiring continues to be old school and antiquated and not actually a fit for the athletes that are coming up now. And you could talk about athletes being soft or young people being too sensitive. I think if you dive into the research about brain development as a result of computers, smartphones, etc., it's not as simple as demonizing the young people for it. It's more about them being guinea pigs for these tools that we have in our hands that are actually extremely deleterious to them developing an ability to take risks and be criticized and understand how to be able to push through that and recognize adversity as something they can build from as opposed to something that they shut down after. Again, this is coming from someone who is a type A extremely competitive. You will not get me down. Tell me what I need to work on. I want feedback kind of person, but I've done enough research at this point for other parts of my job to understand that it's not the fault of young people, that they're developing differently than we used to. Also, we like to romanticize the way things used to be, even as we understood that it resulted in terrible outcomes for a lot of people.
How did you like to be coached?
I wanted to be respected. And I wanted it to be communicated to me why I was doing something. I come from a family of lawyers, which my coaches
explains a lot. Yes.
Ted.
Yes.
Because I remembered what they said word for word, and I wasn't trying to be talked back to them, but I would say, "Oh, okay, but last week you said this. So why are you saying this?" And the reason I would do that wasn't to try to get at them or gotcha. It was because I wanted to understand why they were telling me something. I'm an intellectual. I want to know what we're doing and why, and then use that knowledge to be a better athlete and a better coach on the floor or the court or the field. And we'll talk about my book later, but one of the successful points of Dylan McCullough, who's now the Raiders running backs coach and has had great success at Notre Dame and the Chiefs and USC and other places, is he grew up with a lot of coaches that had the "if they don't fear me, they won't hear me" mentality. And that's an abuse of power, and that's a control issue for me. If you can't get your words and point across without screaming and saying, "because I told you so." Dylan said, I wanted them to understand why I wanted them to make these choices. I wanted them to understand why I wanted to teach them these things. And I wanted it to be a two-way street of I respect them and they respect me, and they know that I want the best out of them, which I think is like true for everything. Think about it as a parent. Are kids more likely to listen to you when they're afraid of you or when they want to make you proud? It's as simple as that. That's my best coaches were the ones that I wanted to make proud and that I felt were deeply invested in my success, not the ones who I thought were on a power trip.
I'll give you an example of, we probably don't have the sound bites, probably worth finding now. Kevin Garnett has a podcast with, I think it's Paul Pierce.
Yep.
And he was talking about when he returned to the Wolves the last time, towards the end of his career. Really then at that point, he's there for leadership and, just to sort of, as he calls himself, to be one of the old heads, right? And he tells a story. It was not that far back, just within the last few weeks, that he comes into the locker room at halftime, and he's got like 3 or 4 things in his head that he thinks they should be talking about, or at least considering on the basis of what's happened in the first half. And he can't find any players in the locker room. They're all in Guardsy. Where were they? Basically, the training room area.
Yep.
All on their phones. And he's like, hold on a second.
We're in the middle of the game.
We got to figure out, and of course, in typical, R-rated, some cases X-rated fashion, as KG tends to talk, it was, we got to talk about what's going on, how we guard the pick and roll. And he said it was for him a rude awakening. And to me, that's a place where you can say, well, if new school is too afraid to set down parameters and even challenge players to say, that ain't going to work. We have work that we need to do. Doesn't mean you have to be screaming when you're saying it. I think it is a balance. It's a combination of, I don't want to demonize all kids. I agree with that. But that if you're brought up in an environment in which you're never led in terms of what you need to do, it becomes too easy, I think, for some coaches just to be hands off and say, I'm going to get in trouble if I ever raise my voice.
Well, I think we agree on process and intention. I think the difference is how. It's not that I think you can't criticize or talk about what they're doing wrong or say that this is a standard that we're not meeting, and if you don't meet that standard, you're out of here. It's how are you saying it,
you convey it,
and how are they receiving it? Are they receiving it like, hey, you're screaming for no reason, or like, this is the standard that we're setting, and we all are in this together to achieve this thing with one shared goal, and when we get there, it's going to be awesome, and we're going to do it for coach, and coach is going to do it for us. It sounds like a movie, but like, that's the best case scenario, not, oh, I want to avoid getting screamed at.
Right.
You have to listen, also there's probably some young people now that just aren't really cut out for sports, and understanding that what we sometimes describe as like the clutch gene or choking is actually probably like your mental ability to handle a deeply stressful situation. And instead of being like, that guy's a choker, he sucks, be like, maybe you shouldn't be here. Again, not anything that someone wants to hear, but like, I don't know. I think to me, too often people want to blame somebody else for their lack of ability to evolve. I talked to Corey Close, who's a fantastic multi-decade coach at UCLA. When she started coaching in the 90s, There were no phones. There were no, there's no NIL. There was no TV deals for women's hoops, all this stuff. And so like for her to have success across multiple generations and understand what's at the root of coaching isn't that. And then have to adjust to now she's essentially running a business of UCLA basketball. And before she was just X's and O's. Now it's a business. Now it's how do I manage this athlete getting millions of dollars and this athlete not? And how do I get them to work? All this other stuff that she's added to her job. But instead of complaining about it, she figures out the evolution of the industry and continues the root of what makes her great at what she does.
Yeah, well, where I agree totally is if you're going to stay in it, if you want to get to go to the college games, there's really no point in being an older coach saying this is, you may believe it's madness, but if you're going to stay in it, you have to evolve.
And I don't blame some of them for leaving.
Right.
Especially right now, this NCAA versus House, the outcomes of that are going to really turn college teams into basically pro teams, where you're now a GM having to allot X percentage of the money that you have to a player when you're recruiting them, promise them this amount, and then next year the amount of the settlement changes, and now you've got a different number that you're trying to manage and arrange, just like a salary cap. That sucks. That's not why you got into college sport. So if they want to leave, I do not blame them. The ones retiring, I don't think should be blamed for saying this isn't the thing that I chose and wanted to get into. And if you're staying, them's the breaks. This is what it looks like now, and decide if you want to be in it.
You're going to have to deal with it for sure. Well, there's examples of coaches. I've talked with Cheryl Reeve about this a little bit, and I mean, there's a lot of coaches who have themselves made adjustments and figured it out, and they may not even like it having to figure it out, but if they're going to stay in it, they get to that. Let me ask you a more general toss-up question. We are going to get to your book, Runs in the Family. Would you say, this might be an impossible question to answer, but are you doing what you envisioned you might be doing when, let's say, you were at Cornell?
No, not at all.
What did you think you were going to be doing then?
Well, there's Think and Hope. My dream continues to be Saturday Night Live, and I feel like I can have that dream as old as I want. Diana Taurasi said old people can have dreams too. And I'm going to continue to have that dream until I die. No, I wanted to do comedy and acting, but I was a 3-sport athlete, all-state in band and chorus. I had every activity imaginable, so trying to do all the things at once, which is kind of like the heptathlon, like master of nothing, jack of all trades. And so I got to college and I wanted to make sure I majored in something that would be useful across multiple subjects, so that if I did finally end with the sports and have the time to pursue acting and comedy stuff, if I didn't like it, what's my skill set? So I was an English major and a writer, and that was just more broadly applicable. And then I moved out to LA to do comedy and acting and stumbled into sports, which no one had ever suggested to me because I was a woman growing up at a time where there were so few women doing it. Right. And I saw basically like Erin Andrews, and I was like, well, I'm not a supermodel who's going to work the sidelines. And I saw like a Linda Cohn, who at the time was much more serious than she is now, because they expected women to be so serious if you wanted to believe they knew what they were talking about. And I wanted to be Kenny Mayne. I wanted to be satire, snark, a little bit of a wink. I wanted to start my highlight packages by saying, and the Cavs are taking on the Bulls. LeBron James warming up. Never seen him play. Heard he's pretty good. If I did that, oh, you moron, how'd you get this job? Who'd you sleep with? You never seen LeBron. And I'm like, that's a joke. Which the beginning of my career was just me on social media telling jokes and people being like, I'm like, here, let me explain it to you. Here's the knowledge I have, which is why that's a joke. And so it just never occurred to me. And then once I got into it, it felt like such a natural fit. Anything that happened after I was like, let me do sports is gravy. And that's why, just like I said earlier, I'm done holding myself back. Because if you had said you're going to win an Emmy or a Peabody or have your own show or be on TV or be on SportsCenter or do any of these things, I would have thought that was like above and beyond my wildest dreams. So no is the answer to your impossible question.
No, that's a good answer. So, but I want to, tells you something about my head. Andrea will probably appreciate this, she knows me pretty well. I'm interested in the comedy part at the front end, whether you bombed, whether you were like, and how down you got. I mean, was that, because my impression always has been is there's nothing harder to do than to try to be funny in front of people
that know you're trying,
and they're trying, and you're not they're not laughing or whatever. That can be so humiliating. I didn't do
stand up, which is the ultimate kind of thing you're thinking of.
Right.
Because I wanted to do SNL, I was trying to do sketch and improv. So I did the whole Second City Conservatory. And I have always wanted to do stand-up. I literally have a notes section of my phone with material for when I finally get the ovaries together to get up there and do it somewhere. But what I will say is it's the scripted part of that makes it the hardest. I host a lot of conferences and events, and I love an audience. And my natural way of speaking and calling back to things and making jokes in the middle, I'm always getting laughs, and I'm like, oh, stand-up would be easy. But the difference is that's extemporaneous, and people know you're reacting in the moment. It's just having a quick wit. Putting together material that's prepared, the expectation to laugh is so much higher when they know you wrote it down and brought it and thought it was going to be funny, and then it isn't. So one day I do want to do that. But yeah, no, I moved out to LA. You know, I would say two things. The hardest thing for me is I hadn't had a lot of serious life experience. So trying to pull from what was a pretty privileged existence that hadn't experienced major ups and downs, and being a relatively immature person for my age, I was in classes trying to learn how to emote things that I hadn't felt or been through. I'd never been in love. I hadn't had a serious, traumatic death or experience in my life. And so these people in my class were able to pull from this place that I just hadn't found in myself yet. I was like hovering at the surface a lot at that point. And then also...
So these are classes you're doing?
Yeah, like acting classes and comedy classes. And, where they were always saying like...
They strip you down on those, though. Those scare the hell out of me, just even thinking about it.
I think if I did it now, I would have so many things to access. Yeah. And also I just have a better life experience. At that point, I'd been through very little, and also wasn't diving deep into myself very often. I was just a happy person. Like, life's great. I don't know why everybody's, all caught up in it. And now I'm like, I get it. But also the teachers would often be like, you would make a great director. Like, you read the script, you know where the jokes are, you know what to tell someone else to do, but like, you're not doing it yet. Right. And then also I hated the business at that point. I hated kissing butt of people that I thought were morons, or racist or sexist or offensive or harassing me. And that was the way you did it. I mean, of course, talent would get you somewhere, but I was just like starting out. But I was going to dinners or going to parties or meeting people and being like, oh, this person sucks. And I have to pretend to like them. And I'm like, oh my God, you're hilarious. And when it got to the sports side, there was
you fake that very well.
Yeah, thank you. There was still a lot of that BS, but it was rooted in knowing your stuff. And being an Ivy League student, hyper over-prepared control person, I was like, oh, I'll out-prepare everyone else. So I might not look like Aaron Andrews, and I might not kiss your ass as well, but I'm going to show up, and you're going to try to trip me up with your TJ Hujmanzada and your whatevers, and I'm going to be like this because I actually watch the sports and I care about it. And eventually that's why I moved back to Chicago, actually, because in LA I saw myself losing out to people in clubbing dresses with fake boobs that looked beautiful that I didn't think knew their stuff. And I knew that's what they were looking for. And I was like, I want to be in Chicago. It's too cold in Chicago.
Fake boobs never work in Chicago. Never have, never will.
I want to tell you what I've found in life is apparently, according to a lot of men, fake boobs work anywhere, especially the men hiring people. Thankfully, mine are natural, so I didn't have to go get surgery to get that one up. I got one leg up on people, and actually, I got two boobs up on people. But it was more that in Chicago, we care so much about our sports that we don't want someone to show up if they don't know their stuff. It doesn't matter how cute you are. It doesn't matter anything else. And so I felt like I could earn it. I could do the work. I could know my stuff. I could use my background in comedy to get personality out of the players and bring fans what they wanted to see from the guys that they liked the most. And it just felt more like, let me work for this than in LA where it felt like it was going to be chance and BS.
Let's take our top of the hour pause. I do want to talk about the book when we come back. We're chatting with Sarah Spain. As you can tell, if you've been listening, someone who has a great deal of difficulty taking a stand. So we'll continue on that vein and get to her book that's getting a lot of very nice attention as well. Don't go